Hi everyone and welcome back. Today is the start of calculating quadratic equations. Now simply put, a quadratic equation has an x to the power of 2 and we usually try and write it in the form of ax squared plus bx plus c. And this a is the coefficient of the x squared and the b is the coefficient of x and c is a constant. Now basically this quadratic equation is the algebraic expression for a parabola. And what is our main job? We're trying to calculate the values of x. Now I said values because quadratic equations have two values for x. Now they are also called the roots of the equation. So when we calculate the values of x, we call them the roots of the equation. Now what are those? Well, they are the x-intercepts. Now the x-intercepts is the place where the parabola crosses the x-axis. And you can see the parabola in white crosses the x-axis in 2 places. So when we calculate x, we will have two values for x. And that is the x-intercepts. Now today we're going to start to learn how to calculate the values of x. Let's go and see. Now let's look at the following example, and they ask us to solve for x, and this is the equation that is given. Now our first job is to identify what type of equation this is. Well, we've got an x to the power of 2, so this is a quadratic equation. Now the next step is, if we have a quadratic equation, we want to move all our terms to one side. So this minus 8 needs to go to this side, and then we end up with x squared plus 2x plus 8 is equal to 0. And this is also in the correct form because it's ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, so now that we have a quadratic equation, we want to factorize it. And this is a trinomial quadratic equation, so we use the trinomial factorization. So we end up with these two brackets, and we've got an x plus 4 and an x minus 2, which is equal to 0. Now this is what we call a zero product rule when we have two or more brackets that gets multiplied and the answer is 0. So what do we need to do for a zero product rule? We need to know what should the value of x in this bracket be to make this bracket a 0. We also need to know what must the x value be in this bracket that makes this bracket a 0. So all that we do is we take these two values, x plus 4, and we equate it to 0. So x plus 4 is equal to 0, so x is equal to minus 4. We do the same with this bracket, so we will say or x minus 2 is equal to 0, so x must be equal to 2. And these are the two roots for this equation, the two values for x. Now let's go and look at another example. Now here is another example where they want us to solve for x, and here is the given equation. Now again, our first job is to identify what type of equation this is. Well, it is a quadratic equation because there's an x to the power of 2. Now, the next job is to move all my terms to one side, and I also want to write it in the correct form. So it's going to look like this. Minus 2x squared plus 7x plus 15 is equal to 0. And it is in the right form now because this is ax squared plus bx plus c. Okay, now the big difference here is that this coefficient of the x squared is a negative value. It's a minus 2. And when we want to factorize a quadratic equation, we don't want this coefficient to be a negative number. So we have a small little trick up our sleeve. We can divide all the way through with a negative 1. So all of these signs will change, and we're allowed to do it because this is an equation. So when we divide with a minus 1 all the way through, the minus 2x squared is going to become 2x squared, the plus 7x a minus 7x, and the plus 15 a minus 15, and it's still equal to 0 because 0 divided by minus 1 is still a 0. Now we have again a quadratic equation that is a trinomial, and we will factorize it. And that will leave us with the following two brackets. We've got 2x plus 3 in brackets and x minus 5 in brackets, which is equal to 0. So again, this is a zero product rule, and we want to know what should this x value be that makes this bracket a 0, and what must this x value be that makes this bracket a 0. So all that we do is we equate this bracket to 0 and we equate this bracket to 0. And here it is. So 2x plus 3 is equal to 0, or x minus 5 is equal to 0. And let's solve for x. 2x is then equal to minus 3, and then we take this minus 3 and we divide it with this coefficient. So x is equal to minus 3 over 2. Or we have a x minus 5, which is equal to 0, and then x is equal to 5. So these are the two values, or the two roots of the equation, and it's the two values for x. And see you next time. Bye.